I never imagined the day would come when my own daughter would look me in the eyes and say, "If you won't sign the loan for him, don't expect to stay here long." That single sentence cracked something inside me, something that had survived years of sacrifice, loyalty, and silent love. And that was the moment I quietly decided I would walk away. Before I tell you how everything turned upside down and why the courtroom went silent, make sure you subscribe for more stories like this. The morning it all happened started like any other ordinary morning in my daughter's house. I had been living with them for a few years, helping with the kids, taking care of the chores, cooking meals, folding endless laundry, and doing everything I could to keep the house running smoothly. I never complained. I never asked for anything in return. I had only one wish: to spend the last stretch of my life close to my daughter and grandchildren. But that morning, the atmosphere in the house felt heavy, like everyone was walking on thin glass. My son-in-law, Eric, kept pacing around the kitchen with a stack of papers in his hand. My daughter, Lee, avoided eye contact with me, her jaw clenched, her voice low and tense whenever she spoke. I sensed something was wrong, but I didn't know the details. Not yet. Finally, Eric approached me. A forced smile stretched across his lips. "Mom," he said, trying to sound calm but failing miserably, "we need a really small favor from you. Just a signature. It's nothing big." I raised an eyebrow. "A signature for what?" He slid the papers across the table and pushed them in front of me. "It's just a loan," he said too quickly. "For the business, everything is safe. We just need a co-signer for approval." I glanced down at the papers. It wasn't a small loan. It wasn't even close. It was massive, big enough to destroy anyone's life if things went wrong. "Eric," I said slowly, "I don't understand this kind of paperwork, but this amount. This is dangerous. I cannot sign something like this." Lee stepped forward instantly, almost as if she had been waiting to react. "What do you mean you can't? It's not like he's asking you to pay for anything. It's just a signature. You live here for free. The least you can do is help us." Her words hit me like a punch to the chest. For free, is that what she thought of me? For 12 years I kept receipts of every grocery I bought, every utility bill I helped with, every school supply for the grandkids, every repair I paid for, not because I expected anything in return, but because I believed in keeping order, in remembering my responsibilities. I wasn't living for free. I was helping build the home they were standing in. "I'm sorry," I said firmly but gently, "but I simply cannot sign something that could put my entire life at risk." Eric muttered something under his breath, but Lee exploded. "Oh my God, Mom, you're unbelievable," she snapped. "You know what? If you can't do something this small for us, then don't expect to stay here long. We can't keep supporting you if you won't support us. Support me." Her words echoed in my mind like broken glass, falling on a concrete floor. I stood quietly, staring at her, unable to process that my own daughter, the child I raised alone, the girl I took to school every day, the girl I worked double shifts for so she could have a good life, was now treating me like a burden. There was a long silence, the kind that changes everything. I nodded slowly. "Okay." I whispered, "I understand." Lee looked confused for a moment, maybe expecting me to shout or argue, but I didn't. I walked to my small room, closed the door, and began packing the few belongings I had brought with me. A sweater, my books, a framed photo of Lee as a baby, and a small folder, my 12 years of receipts. I didn't plan on using them. I never thought I would. But something told me to take them. When I walked out with my small bag, Lee looked shocked. "Where are you going?" "You said I shouldn't expect to stay long," I answered quietly. "So I'm leaving now." Her eyes widened. "Mom, don't be dramatic." Eric smirked and turned away, clearly relieved. I didn't say another word. I simply walked out the door, the cold air hitting my face as I stepped onto the sidewalk. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what my next step was. I only knew that I couldn't stay where my presence was no longer respected. I spent 2 days in a small, cheap motel on the edge of town. The room smelled of damp carpet and old cigarette smoke, but it was quiet, peaceful, lonely, yes, painfully lonely, but honest. No one there pretended to care. No one there pretended I was a burden. On the 3rd day, my phone began ringing nonstop. First Lee, then Eric, then Lee again, then the kids calling from their mother's phone. "Grandma, Mommy says please come back. Grandma, we miss you. Grandma, Daddy is in trouble." I didn't answer any calls. But by sunset, Lee showed up outside the motel. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her hair messy like she hadn't slept. "Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling, "please come back home." I didn't move. I didn't speak. "I'm sorry," she cried. "I shouldn't have said that. I should have never spoken to you that way. Please, we need you." Eric's loan got rejected because he didn't have a co-signer, He panicked. He made a scene. It turned into a legal mess, Mom. Everything is out of control. I kept listening silently, and now they're saying you lived with us and depended on us financially. They're trying to say Eric carried the household and that you owe him for cost of living. Mom, it's insane, but they're using it legally. They're trying to drag you into this. The calmness inside me deepened. Finally, I asked, they're claiming they supported me financially. She nodded, crying harder. Yes, they filed it officially. Please come home, help me fix this. I didn't go home with her. Instead, I went straight to my small storage box, opened the folder, and touched the stack of receipts. 12 years of proof. 12 years of groceries, bills, repairs, monthly contributions, school expenses. Thousands of dollars worth. The next day in court, when they smirked and claimed I had lived off them, I stepped forward, opened my bag, and gently dropped the entire stack of receipts on the courtroom table. The judge's eyebrows shot up. Lee gasped. Eric's face drained of color. The courtroom went silent, completely silent, and that was only the beginning. The silence in the courtroom was so heavy it felt like the air had thickened. 12 years' worth of receipts lay in front of the judge like a pile of quiet truths no one had expected. Pages and pages, each one showing a date, a store, an amount paid, and my signature. Every grocery haul, every electric bill, every plumber visit, every school supply receipt, every contribution I made to keep that house running. For a moment, no one moved, not the judge, not the attorneys. Not even the people in the seats behind me who had come for their own hearings but were now frozen, staring at the mountain of paper I had just dropped. Eric's attorney blinked several times as if the receipts might disappear if he just stared hard enough. Lee covered her mouth, tears forming again, and Eric looked like somebody had poured ice water down his spine. The judge leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. Ma'am, he said, tapping a finger on the table, are you telling the court that these receipts represent your financial contributions during your time in the household? I nodded, yes, Your Honor, every single one. He flipped through a few pages, scanning dates from 12 years ago up to just weeks before I left their home. With each page he turned, the defense attorney's shoulders slumped lower. The judge exhaled. This is substantial, he murmured. Eric's attorney scrambled to recover. Your Honor, he said quickly, even if she purchased household items, that does not. The judge raised a hand sharply. Counselor, she did not purchase household items. She contributed consistently and significantly. These receipts show thousands of dollars spent on groceries, utilities, repairs, children's supplies, and other essentials. This directly contradicts your client's claim that she was financially dependent on him. Eric swallowed hard, his jaw locking and unlocking. Lee's gaze dropped to the floor. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I didn't even feel victory, just disappointment, and a strange calmness like finally stepping out of a storm. The judge turned to me. Ma'am, do you have anything more to say? I took a deep breath. Your Honor, I never wanted to bring these into a courtroom. I kept them only because I grew up believing in keeping records. I never thought I'd need to defend myself against my own family. But I refused to be painted as someone who took advantage when all I ever did was give everything I had. There were murmurs in the room, soft whispers from strangers reacting to my words. The judge nodded slowly. We will take a brief recess, he announced. When he stepped out, everyone else followed except Lee and Eric. The moment the door closed behind the judge, Lee approached me cautiously, like someone walking toward a wild animal. Mom, she whispered. I didn't know he was going to take it this far. I looked at her. Really looked at her. For the first time, she couldn't hide behind anger, pride, or excuses. She looked like the little girl I once carried on my hip, scared, lost, fragile. You allowed it, I said gently but firmly. Maybe you didn't file the claim, but you let him treat me like a burden. You let him speak for both of you. She wiped her eyes, guilt washing over her face. I'm sorry, Mom. I swear I didn't mean for it to turn into this. I said something horrible that day. I know. I was stressed. I was scared. But I didn't want you to leave. I didn't want this. I heard the desperation in her voice, but something inside me had shifted. I wasn't the same woman who walked into their home months ago, hopeful and willing to endure anything just to be close to her grandchildren. I was a woman who had been threatened, discarded, and then dragged to court. You know, I said softly, you never asked me why I refused to sign that loan. Lee blinked, because it was risky. I shook my head, no, because it was impossible. She frowned. What do you mean? I took a step back and opened my bag. Beneath the receipts lay another folder, one I hadn't shown anyone yet. Slowly, deliberately, I pulled it out. My savings account, I said. This is why I couldn't sign the loan. Not because I didn't trust you, but because if I signed it, the bank would have checked my financial background, and that would have revealed something I was trying to protect. Eric stiffened. What is that supposed to mean? I opened the folder and handed the first page to Lee. Her hands trembled as she read the bold numbers. What is this? She whispered. It's my investment statement. I replied quietly. I've been saving for years, much longer than you know. Eric snatched the paper from her. This is 6 figures. Where did you get this? How? By working, I said calmly. By living simply, by taking extra shifts before I moved in with you, by putting away every bit of money I could, by never asking anyone for help. Lee stared at the papers, stunned. But why didn't you tell me? Because I said, I never wanted you to feel obligated. I never wanted you to think I was living with you because I needed money. I stayed because I wanted to help, not because I had no choice. Eric's face twisted. So you could have signed the loan then? You had money for backup? I turned to him sharply. No, I had money for my future, not to finance your risky business decision. If it failed, I would have lost the security I spent decades building. For once, he had no comeback. Lee's lips quivered. Mom, all this time, you weren't struggling. I was humble. I replied, that's different. The door opened suddenly. The judge returned, followed by the clerk. Everyone resumed their places. The judge cleared his throat. I have reviewed everything. It's clear the claim filed against you is baseless. Your financial contributions exceed what would be expected of any household guest. Therefore, the accusation that you were financially dependent is dismissed. Eric clenched his jaw. Lee exhaled in relief, but the judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, he continued, given the evidence of her significant contributions and the false claims made against her, she may pursue reimbursement or even damages if she wishes. The court acknowledges the emotional and financial distress this incident may have caused. Eric's head snapped toward me. You wouldn't? I met his eyes calmly. I haven't decided yet. The judge nodded toward me. You are free to go, ma'am. When the hearing ended, Lee followed me outside the courthouse. Eric walked a few steps behind, silent and tense. Lee reached for my hand. Mom, please come home with us. We'll fix everything. We'll start over. I'll never let him talk to you that way again. Just, please don't go. Her voice was so soft, so broken, that for a moment my heart cracked. But then I remembered the motel room, the cold sidewalk, the words she threw at me. Don't expect to stay here long. I pulled my hand back gently. I love you, Lee, I said softly, but love should never require me to shrink myself. She shook her head. Mom, please, I need space, I said. I need time, and I need respect, something I haven't felt in that house for a long time. Eric opened his mouth. So what now? You're just going to abandon the kids, abandon your daughter. I looked at him with a calmness that surprised even me. No, but I'm no longer going to abandon myself. He had no answer. I walked away from them, each step feeling both heavier and lighter at the same time. The sun was warm, the street busy, but every sound felt distant as I processed everything that had unfolded. I had walked into that courtroom prepared to defend myself, but I walked out realizing I had been defending myself for years. When I reached the sidewalk, Lee called out again, Mom, when can we see you? I didn't turn back. When you learn to treat me as someone you love, not someone you use. And then I kept walking, but this was far from over, because just days later, someone knocked on my door with news that changed everything and dragged me back into a situation I thought I had finally escaped. The knock on my door came early in the morning, sharp, urgent, relentless. I had barely slept the night before, replaying the courtroom scene again and again, wondering if I had done the right thing by walking away from Lee and her family. A part of me felt strong, but another part, a softer, older part, felt exhausted. I stood up slowly, wrapped my shawl tighter around myself, and walked to the door. When I opened it, I froze. Standing there was Mr. Hayes, my old landlord from years ago, a polite, gray-haired man with gentle eyes and a habit of removing his glasses whenever he had bad news. Except today. His expression wasn't sadness. It was something else. Something closer to urgency, almost fear. Ma'am, he said, slightly out of breath, I've been looking everywhere for you. I blinked. For me, why? He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, wiped sweat from his forehead, and handed me an envelope thick, sealed and stamped with official markings. I'm sorry to bring this to you like this, he said, but you need to read it, now. My heart tugged painfully. Is it from Lee? Did something happen to the kids? He shook his head. No, it's something else. I sat down on the sofa and opened the envelope slowly. Inside were several documents, notarized statements, legal warnings, and a letter from a law firm I didn't recognize. As I scanned the first page, my breath caught. "What is this?" I whispered. Mr. Hayes took off his glasses. "Your son-in-law, Eric. He filed an appeal." My fingers tightened on the paper. "What kind of appeal?" "A financial one," he replied quietly. "He's fighting the court's dismissal. He's claiming the receipts were forged. He's demanding a forensic audit of your finances. He wants your assets frozen until the investigation is complete." The world tilted. My heartbeat roared in my ears. "He wants my assets?" I asked slowly, as if the word itself was poison. "Yes," Mr. Hayes said, lowering his voice. "He found out about your savings, about your investments, and now he wants access legally." I closed my eyes. A wave of disbelief washed over me. The man who had looked me in the eye and told me I was a burden, the man whose greed had almost pushed me out into the street, was now trying to take the very savings I had built with my own hands. I felt something in me grow still, dangerously still. How did he even get this information? I whispered. I never showed him anything except a single statement. Mr. Hayes hesitated. "There's more." He handed me another document, a private investigator's report. My stomach twisted. "He hired someone to look into your past finances," he said. "Every job you worked, every property you rented, every bank account you opened. He's trying to build a case that your savings are marital or mutual family contributions, meaning he can claim a portion." My hands trembled, but my voice did not. "He wants to steal my life's work." Mr. Hayes sighed. "Yes, and he's moving fast. That's why I came. You need protection. You need an attorney before he tears apart everything you've built." A bitter silence followed. After a moment, I asked, "Why are you helping me?" He looked down, swallowed, then met my eyes. "Because years ago, when you lived in my building, you paid your rent early. You brought soup when my wife was sick. You helped carry groceries for the elderly tenants. You even paid for the repair of the broken hallway heater without telling anyone. I remember good people, and I don't let good people fight alone." A lump rose in my throat. It had been so long since anyone had spoken to me like that. I nodded weakly. "Thank you." He placed a lawyer's card on my table. "Call her. She's tough, and she hates bullies." When he left, the room felt unbearably quiet. I sat there, staring at the documents, my hands gripping the edges until my knuckles turned white. Eric wasn't done. He wasn't humiliated enough in the courtroom. He wanted revenge. He wanted control. He wanted money that didn't belong to him, but beneath my fear, something else stirred, strength, a slow, burning strength that comes only when you've been pushed too far too many times. I picked up the phone and dialed the number. A sharp voice answered. "Law Office of Mariah Cole." "My name is," I began. "Oh, I know who you are," she interrupted. Mr. Hayes called ahead. "I'm expecting you." Her voice was clear, confident, unshakable, exactly what I needed. "Can you help me?" I asked quietly. "That depends," she said. "Do you want to defend yourself, or do you want to fight back?" I didn't hesitate. I want to fight back. 2 days later, I walked into a mess. Cole's office with a folder of documents. She skimmed through everything with laser focus, the receipts, the investment statements, the appeal forms, the investigator's notes. Finally, she leaned back in her chair. "He's digging for money," she said, simple as that. "But what he doesn't realize is that he has opened a door he cannot close." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She slid a stack of papers toward me. "These are the financial reports from his business. I pulled them after you told me he applied for a massive loan. The numbers are inconsistent, money is missing, taxes aren't filed properly, he's been hiding income." My eyes widened. "So he's, what? Committing fraud, worse," she said. "He's laundering money through fake expenses. If the court looks into your finances, they'll automatically look into his, and when they do, his whole operation collapses." A cold rush went through me. "So by trying to attack me, he's exposing himself," she smirked. "Exactly." I exhaled slowly. This wasn't just self-defense anymore. This was strategy. "Do you want to proceed?" she asked. My jaw tightened. "Yes," she stood. "Good, because I already filed the counter motion." I blinked. "Counter motion. To freeze his assets," she said. "Since he initiated the claim, you now have grounds to investigate his finances. This will hit him harder than he expects." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A quiet woman who had lived humbly, quietly in the corners of her daughter's home now had the legal power to bring Eric's entire empire to its knees. It felt unreal. Unbelievable, but also justified. The next morning, the storm arrived. Not rain, not wind, not thunder. Lee. She barged into the lobby of a mess. Cole's office, red-eyed, frantic, shaking. "Mom." she cried, rushing toward me. What have you done? Her voice echoed off the walls. People turned to stare. I stood still, calm, grounded. What's wrong? I asked. She held her phone up, her hands trembling. He just got a notice. Eric's accounts. His business accounts. Everything is frozen. He can't access anything. His lawyer says he might be charged. Mom, he's furious. What did you do? I took a slow breath. What he forced me to do, I said quietly. He came after my savings, my life, my security. He hired investigators. He filed false claims. He tried to use the court to take everything from me. She shook her head, crying harder. But Mom, now he's talking about divorce. He says I destroyed his reputation by telling you too much. He says you're trying to ruin him. My heart tightened painfully. Lee, I warned you months ago. Eric doesn't love you. He loves power. She looked shattered. He says if you don't drop the case, he'll take the kids. A cold silence fell between us, heavy, terrifying. That man, that greedy, selfish man, was now threatening to separate a mother from her children. My blood ran cold, but before I could respond, Ms. Cole stepped in. No judge will take those children away, she said firmly. Not when we expose what Eric has been hiding. But you need to choose, Lee. You can stand with him, or you can stand with the truth. Lee looked at me, truly looked at me, and in her eyes I saw fear, pain, regret, but also something I hadn't seen in years. Awakening. Mom, she whispered, voice breaking. What do I do? I reached out and took her trembling hands. You stop letting him control you. I said softly, you stop letting him control all of us. She sobbed into my shoulder, but neither of us knew that things were about to get even worse, because that very night, Eric vanished, disappeared without warning, without explanation, and what he left behind would drag all of us into a darkness deeper than anything we had experienced so far. Eric vanished the same way a snake slips between tall grass silently, suddenly, and leaving behind only the dread of knowing it's still out there somewhere. Lee called me at nearly midnight, her voice shaking so badly I could barely understand her words. Mom, he's gone. He's not home. His phone is off. His car is missing. He took some documents. I don't know what to do. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. Where are the kids? With me, she whispered. They're asleep. They don't know anything yet. Lock your doors. I said, I'll come to you. When I arrived, Lee was pacing the living room like someone who had lost her footing on the edge of a cliff. She ran to me, clinging to my arm. He left his wedding ring. She said, voice trembling. Just left it on the counter. Who does that? And his laptop. It's wiped clean. Mom, I think he's running. I felt a coldness spread through me. Running meant guilt. Running meant danger. Running meant desperation, and desperate men do desperate things. Did he say anything before he left? I asked. Lee wiped her eyes, only that he'd fix everything and that I ruined his life. I exhaled slowly. He didn't mean you. He meant me. Lee shook her head fiercely. No, Mom, he meant both of us. He said if the court investigates him fully, he could lose everything, even go to jail. A silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. Then my phone pinged, a text from an unknown number. You did this. A chill rushed through my chest. Another message followed. You should have signed the loan. My heart slammed so hard I felt it in my throat. I showed the screen to Lee, whose face drained of color. Mom, she whispered, he's blaming you. Before I could reply, a final message pinged. Tell your mother the next knock on her door won't be a warning. Lee's hand flew to her mouth. Mom, we need help. We already have help, I said, grabbing my keys. We're going to the police. At the police station, the officer listened carefully, then leaned back in his chair. Ma'am, given the financial investigation and his disappearance, we need to flag this. It could be connected to fraud, evasion, or potential retaliation. He types something on his computer. We'll issue an alert. If he uses his card's phone or crosses state lines, we'll know. And the messages? I asked. The officer nodded, threatening. Definitely needs to be recorded. Lee looked like she might collapse. Do you think he'll come home? The officer hesitated. That depends on why he ran. That silence was louder than any answer. When we returned to Lee's house, the kids had woken up. Little Emma rubbed her eyes and toddled toward her mother. Mommy, where's Daddy? She asked. Lee broke. She dropped to her knees and held her daughter close, crying silently so the children wouldn't see the fear behind her tears. Watching her hold them, I felt something inside me harden, something unbreakable. I would not allow him to destroy her life, or mine, or those innocent children's. The next morning, Ms. Cole called me with news. It's happening, she said. The financial investigation triggered a federal alert. His business accounts were flagged for suspicious activity. The IRS is involved now. I inhaled sharply. What does that mean? It means he's running from more than a family dispute, she replied. There's evidence he used falsified documents to secure other loans. If that's true, he's facing prison. I sank into a chair, so that's why he disappeared. Yes, she said, but you need to be careful. Cornered people lash out. I closed my eyes. I know, but what she said next chilled me deeper than anything. There's more. He transferred money to an offshore account the same night he left. My blood ran cold, so he planned this. Yes, this wasn't a panic escape. This was calculated. I opened my mouth to reply, but a sudden crash echoed from outside. A shattering sound. I froze. Mariah. I whispered, "Someone's outside my window." "Get away from the window," she said sharply. I crept backward, heart pounding, and peered from the corner of the curtain. A rock lay on the ground, wrapped in a piece of paper. I couldn't breathe. Mom. Lee called from the hallway. "Is everything okay?" I didn't answer. I unlocked the door and stepped outside slowly. The air felt thick, unnaturally still. Hands shaking, I picked up the rock and unwrapped the paper. It was a photograph, an old one, from years ago, me holding Emma as a baby, smiling, happy, safe, but someone had drawn a red X over my face. And another red X over Emma's. My entire body turned to ice. This wasn't a warning. This was a promise. "Mom." Lee whispered behind me, voice trembling. "What is that?" I turned slowly, forcing myself to stay calm. "It's a threat," I said. "He's watching, or someone is watching for him." Lee covered her mouth, a sob breaking from her chest. Before I could comfort her, a car sped past the house fast. Too fast, its windows tinted pitch black. My stomach dropped. He was close, too close, and he wasn't running anymore. He was hunting. I stepped backward into the house, locking the door behind us. "Mom." Lee whispered, voice trembling, "What are we going to do?" I took her hand in mine, my voice steady despite the fear crawling beneath my skin. "We are not going to hide," I said. "We're going to end this." She looked at me through tears. "How?" I looked at the photo again. At the red X's, at the threat meant to break me, and instead of fear, something else ignited, resolve. "I'm going to expose everything." I said, all of it, his fraud, his lies, his crimes, everything he has tried to bury. Lee wiped her tears, swallowing hard. "What if he comes back?" I met her eyes, "Then he'll regret it." But even I didn't know how soon that moment would come, because just as I said those words, there was another knock on the door, slow. Deliberate, heavy. Lee froze, I froze, and when I opened the door, standing there was someone I had never expected to see again. Someone who held the final key to Eric's secrets, and the truth they brought would change everything. I sat silently in the small rented room, the dim yellow bulb flickering above me as if even the light was unsure whether to stay or leave. The floor was cold, harder than anything I had slept on in years, but somehow it felt warmer than the house I had left behind. At least these four walls weren't judging me. At least this silence wasn't poisoned with entitlement. My daughter's words still echoed in my ears, sharp like broken glass. "If you won't sign the loan, don't expect to stay here long." For a moment, even breathing felt like betrayal, as if the air itself had turned against me. I held my small bag closer, the same bag I had packed quietly so the neighbors wouldn't hear me leaving. I didn't want anyone to ask why a mother, after giving her entire life to her only child, was suddenly walking away like an unwanted guest, but I knew this wasn't sudden. This wasn't new. This was the final crack in a wall that had been breaking for years. For 12 years, I paid bills that weren't mine. I bought groceries I never ate. I repaired appliances I barely touched, and I saved every receipt not because I ever planned revenge, not because I expected anything back, but because keeping proof made me feel like I wasn't going insane. Those receipts were the only place where my efforts lived honestly, the only place where my value wasn't questioned. Now, sitting alone on a thin mattress, I realized that every small sacrifice had led me here to loneliness, to abandonment, to a room that smelled of cheap paint and dust. My phone buzzed, the screen lit up with my daughter's name. For a moment, my heart lifted, foolishly hoping she would say the one sentence I still longed to hear. "Mom, come back home." But when I answered, her voice was cold. "Did you think leaving like that would make us feel guilty?" She snapped, "Stop acting dramatic. Just sign the loan papers and come back." I closed my eyes tightly, forcing myself not to cry. "Sweetheart, I can't sign a loan that big. I can't take responsibility for something I know he won't repay." "You don't trust my husband," she yelled. "I don't trust debt." I whispered, "I'm old. If something happens, fine." She cut me off. "Then stay wherever you are. Don't call me again unless you're ready to sign." The line went dead. I stared at the phone until the screen dimmed and went black. She had hung up, but emotionally. She had let go a long time ago. That night I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, counting all the moments I had put my dreams aside so she could chase hers. Her education, her wedding, her home, everything I had, I gave. And yet, here I was alone in a rented room because I refused to sign a loan for a man who hadn't worked consistently for even 6 months. Around dawn, I made myself a cup of tea using the small kettle in the corner. The steam fogged up my glasses, and for a moment I saw my reflection tired, wrinkled, but not defeated. That was the moment I realized something. I may have left their house, but I hadn't left my strength. Over the next few days, the silence around me became less painful. I started walking in the nearby park, talking to neighbors, doing small freelance tasks online that I had learned years ago, for the first time in a long time. I felt peaceful. I felt like a human again, not a servant. No one shouted at me. No one treated me like an ATM. No one demanded signatures, money, favors, or sacrifices. But peace, like all good things, makes the toxic ones restless. On the 4th day, the knocks began, loud, desperate. Iked Mom opened the door. I froze. It was my daughter, not the arrogant version, not the demanding version. This was a scared, shaken voice. When I opened the door, she rushed in, crying. My son-in-law stood behind her, pale and sweating, the confidence gone from his eyes. Mom, please come back. She cried, we need you. The words I had begged for just days earlier, now arrived not with love, but with fear. What happened? I asked quietly. They rejected the loan. My son-in-law said helplessly. They said my credit history was too bad. Now we're getting legal notices, we thought. Maybe if you explain that you support us. Maybe. I stepped back. So now I am needed. My daughter wiped her tears. Mom, please, we'll lose everything. I felt something shift inside me. The old version of me, the one who would have immediately forgiven, immediately helped. She took a single step back and allowed the stronger me to speak. Let me show you something, I said. I walked to the corner of the room, opened my bag, and pulled out the thick envelope I had carried with me for 12 years, the envelope that my daughter never cared to ask about. The envelope filled with receipts, electricity bills, groceries, repairs, school fees, medical costs, thousands and thousands of dollars over the years. I dropped them onto the small table. The papers spilled everywhere, like snow falling across the room. My daughter stared at them in confusion. What is all this? I said calmly, is everything I paid for while living in your house, everything I covered when you said you were too busy or when he said he'd pay me back soon. Every sacrifice you forgot, every penny you pretended wasn't mine. Her eyes widened as she sifted through the papers, dates, amounts, signatures. You kept. Everything. I did. I whispered, not to punish you, but to remind myself that I wasn't imagining my worth. My son-in-law swallowed hard. Why are you showing us this? Because you want the court to believe I support you financially. These receipts are proof of 12 years of support from me to you, not the other way around. My daughter looked terrified. Mom, what do you mean court? I looked at both of them. If you want me involved in legal matters, then we go to court. And when we go, I will place these 12 years of receipts in front of the judge, and I will let the court decide who owes whom. Their faces drained of color. My son-in-law took a step forward. Please, don't do this. I shook my head. You pushed me out, remember. Silence hung in the air, thick, suffocating, undeniable. And at that moment they realized something. I wasn't the weak mother who could be pressured anymore. I wasn't the person they could use when convenient. I was someone who had finally learned how to defend her dignity, and this was just the beginning.